Hello there guys, and welcome to Mad Dog Minis. In this video we're going to have a little bit of fun making a proxy for a Thunderhawk / Stormbird for the Horus Heresy. And now I know what you're thinking about this Thunderbird 2 toy I've got here. It's not exactly fitting in with the Warhammer 40,000 aesthetic. It's not a problem for me. I mean, I know it's quite modern, quite sleek looking, but I kind of like it and I'm going to make it work. But I hear you, it's not exactly 40k. So I'm going to see if I can get a Rhino troop transport to fit in this pod as part of the conversion, and I'm also going to try and do a detailed crew compartment here just because we've got access to it and the toy allows that. So let's get down to the workbench and see what we can do with this thing. First thing is to examine the pod. The Rhino transport won't fit in directly without any modification, but it will accommodate a Rhino, this pod, so I think it is worth pursuing. First of all, just unscrew the pod and take it apart, see what we got inside. The door, the front hatch, is actually free floating, so that's just held in when you put the pod together. Got a lot of internal bracing there which may need to be modified. We've got this launch mechanism which isn't really relevant, that's for the kind of whatever toy was in there. We've got this back plate here which you're going to need to keep hold of and glue on place it on the back of the pod there to hide the hole. We've got some wheels as well, which I'm going to keep in situ. I can't really see a good reason for removing those, to be honest, so we'll keep those where they are. Now looking at the back of the pod here, we can see these 3 support struts. You need to take those out in order to accommodate the kind of Rhino's length inside the pod. So just clipper them out with some hobby snips, job done. Just doing a little bit of a dry run in this footage here, just to show you that it does work. All right, so the door needs to close fully for the pod to be able to fit up into the aircraft, and it will. So this is definitely worth carrying on with. Now we need to do something about the door frame. So on the door sides, you need to take about 1/8 of an inch off around the sides. And just a quick note here, this won't work for the Horus Heresy Rhino, you know, the one with the circular doors and the big kind of chunky exhaust pipes. You'll need to do some further work for that, and I do that later on in the video, so stick around if you're interested in like making that happen. All right, just to let you know now. But otherwise, just give it a bit of a file off around the edges and a tidy up, and job's done. And it's actually quite a straightforward conversion if you're just using a standard Space Marine Rhino. There isn't anything more you need to do really other than put the pod back together. All right, you do need to be a little bit careful about height. If you're putting storm bolters and things on top, you may need to do some modification to make them a bit flatter because you haven't got much clearance coming out. You certainly won't be able to have crew poking out the top of it, so just a word of warning there. All right, so moving on, we're going to kind of just glue that back plate in, so we're covering up that hole I was talking about earlier. Okay, and there's actually a smaller plate next to it. Again, I think the role of this thing, which sticks out a little bit at the back, was to kind of activate the electronics and the audio kind of functions of the toy, which obviously I'm not interested in, and it'll just produce extra friction if we leave it there. So I'm going to take that out, and later on I actually just put a little bit of cardstock in there just to cover that up with a bit of super glue, so it's a really easy fix, that. So looking at the base section of the pod here, we need to kind of level this floor out to come in line with those wheel sections. So I cut out a little bit of, this is just standard foam board, and put that in, super glue that down, cut out 2 smaller pieces just to brace in between there, in between the wheel sections. Now that doesn't quite bring the floor up in line with those wheels, so I'm going to need to add in a couple of thin layers just to bump it up a little bit, and I just use regular cardstock for that. So I just kind of cut out a shape, make a kind of template, do it twice and stick it down with super glue, and that's done. And that actually provides enough height then to glue a single piece of stitching mesh over the top, which is the stuff I'm going to use just to add a bit of texture and interest to the interior. I mean, I love stitching mesh as a material, but I know it's kind of universally hated in the crafting community. So if you're doing anything like this, just use whatever you like, guys, really. But does it for me, this, really easily. So looking at the crew compartment here, it came with these seats when I got it from eBay, this toy, and I'm guessing this is where they go, but they're going to need to be moved to accommodate some Space Marine crew. So I take the seats out, tidy them up a little bit, chop off the nubs off the bottom and these little things that stick up at the sides, because they're going to interfere with sticking the crew members on, so they need to come off. Easily done with hobby snips, so no problems there. Then grab a couple of old intercessors, snap them apart. This is one of the merits of using super glue. I always use super glue on my miniatures. I don't use plastic cement, or at least very rarely. I'm definitely camp super glue because I'm always kind of chopping and changing and recycling things. So yeah, I'm definitely an advocate for it. After I've kind of broken those down as much as I can, I need to saw the legs off. So I just saw above the belt with a hobby saw, because the torso and leg sections are in one piece on the Primaris miniatures. So once I've freed the legs up on these two, we then need to chop the legs off with some hobby snips. They come off quite easily. This is a very rough and ready conversion, guys, proper Mad Dog style here. If you're squeamish, you might want to fast forward this bit, but this is just literally chopping up and gluing on. I just taper the legs a little bit. I glue the groin section on there, kind of slightly floating on the chair, and then just kind of stick them on. The reason I'm not taking too much care over this is the legs are not really going to be too visible on the end result anyway, but you could take more time and do a tidier job if you wish, of course. So there you are, a little bit of fiddling around just to get some nice rough seated positions here. You're going to need to take the belt buckles off as well, the kind of belt area. Just trim that down with some hobby snips, and that'll allow, in this case, me to kind of slot a Mark IV torso right over the top, and the little armoured plate will slot over that area you've just trimmed back quite nicely. And I used Mark IVs because obviously I want it to be kind of Horus Heresy. And we just need to add the arms and the heads on. Now, no backpacks because they're on the seats, of course. So these gunner arms from the Rhino kit serve really well for the pilot. We've all got some of those floating around, those kind of Rhino sprues, haven't we? And then for the other guy, just a kind of pointing arm, just making out like he's working one of the consoles nearby. And we're going to add a little bit of EPVC in there just to kind of make a console area. And I'm actually going to return to this later in the video. So now we're going to get to grips with the Horus Heresy era Rhino. As you can see, we're going to need a lot more room to clear. It's a wider model. Now, this is actually a Forge World model I've got here, so I don't know if the plastic kit has different dimensions, but I'm going on the Forge World dimensions. So you need to cut out really the whole rim all the way around the kind of entrance. It takes a little bit of work. Use some pliers, use some hobby snips, just get rid of all that. All the internal bracing needs to go as well. That isn't going to compromise the structural integrity of the pod. I mean, remember, this is a toy. We don't need it to be super, super strong. It's not going to be continually dropped by young children anymore, hopefully. So just take all that bracing out, give it a tidy up and a file down. That's where you need to be for that. Now, that'll accommodate the width going through, but you need to kind of chop these diagonal sections off just underneath the door section there, just to clear the foot plates of the Rhino. The door itself, that needs some modification too, because we've cut out the rim all the way around. We don't have anything to hold the door in, so I just cut off two little tiny bits of EPVC and very, very carefully super glued them in place just to kind of add a little hollow for the hinge mechanism of the door. So a simple job, but you need to be careful with it. So that kind of allows the Rhino to slide in and out a little bit easier. Those foot plates stick out quite a way and are quite low down. Here I'm just adding in a little bit of cardstock just to kind of cover up those holes that I've just created by trimming those diagonal pieces out for those foot plates. And inside I just trim down what's left of the internal supports just so those foot plates don't catch on the Rhino as you're kind of loading in and out. So it's best to do that now, of course, before you start gluing anything together. A little bit of cardstock in that hole at the back. Like I said earlier, I was going to do that. This is where I'm doing it. And we're getting ready to actually glue the pod together now. And I just use a bit of super glue for that. I can't screw it together anymore because we've just cut out all the mechanism for doing that, really. So a little bit of super glue does the job. Just make sure you get it really, really well lined up if you are copying this. And these plastic tacos are going to be nice console pieces in the cockpit area. So they go on there. And I just use a whole load of other kind of junk from the bits box to create like a kind of, nice detailed area. So we've got some adhesive pearls on the consoles, we've got las cannon cabling, we've got bits of Lego, we've got bits of other tank kits, the Lehman Russ Executioner, a bit from the turret here at the front. And we've also put a Rhino door on the back as well. I've also got some handles from a heavy bolter there for the co-pilot, so he's got a set of controls too. Here's the Rhino door look, just to suggest access through to the rear part of the aircraft. And a little bit of a spray prime brings it all together, and then we just put a little bit of lead belcher spray over the top of that. we are going to do some more detail work in there in a while. So coming underneath the aircraft now, I'm going to put some weapons on. I didn't take too much time over the weapons. Kind of wish I thought about it a bit more, but I wanted to get this project kind of done and dusted. So I just cut 2 very rough holes with the Dremel, and that allows me to kind of slot the weapons down into them, so kind of integrate them a little bit more. It is a little bit of a rough job, this, but it is underneath, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm just using the auto cannons from the Leman Russ tank kit. I've got 2 of those, so it's got 2 double-barreled auto cannons underneath, which is, I think, enough firepower for a transport. And I'm just going to fill in the gaps a little bit with a little bit of hot glue, and that'll just stabilize them a little bit, because super glue is a bit brittle, and obviously this is underneath, so they're liable to get knocked around, so that's worth doing. A little bit of a tidy up with a knife, and a little bit of a file down. We are going to have a little bit of a mess under here with the hot glue, but I'm just tidying up as best I can, really. Going to paint the crew before we put them in the cockpit. I'm not going to talk my way through the colours here, so you can kind of see what I'm doing, but just want to take the opportunity to thank all my subscribers. It's really great, guys. The channel's growing steadily and slowly, and you know, if you're not already subbed and you're watching, please consider giving me a sub, because it all helps the channel to grow. And if you don't want to do that, consider throwing me a like or a share. It all helps. I really do appreciate it. So here I'm just doing the Legion symbol. So I put some tactical symbols, look, on the right shoulder pauldrons, and the Legion symbol is a very old Space Wolves transfer, and then I just kind of pencil in a crescent moon underneath. This is the older Legion symbol for the Lunar Wolves. I don't like the newer one, so I'm using the older one. So I'm just polishing these guys off a little bit, doing it now because otherwise they're going to be a bit hard to paint kind of in situ. A little bit of careful black lining there on the Legion symbol. Throw a wash all over those, just a little bit of a tidy up on some colours, and they're, you know, virtually ready to go, really. I'm not really one for kind of painting things separately, but this is one case where it really did make sense, because it would have been really difficult to get the angles in otherwise. So I'm going to actually attach those into the cockpit using a bit of hot glue, and there they are. A little bit of careful alignment, a little bit of attention to detail and symmetry goes a long way. And moving on to the pod again, we're going to have to take the ram off the front of this Rhino, so there's no way that'll fit in there as well. I could magnetize it. I'm not going to. I don't really care enough, but that's going to go in the bits box for something else later. As you can see here, it goes in, no problems at all. So result. Going back to the cockpit, just tidying things up in there, a little bit of a splash of colour on the consoles. We throw a bit of a wash down in there as well. It's all going to start to come together really nice. You can see that I've put backpacks up on the wall, so if they need to exit the aircraft, they're not going to just like stop kind of solidly. I removed the hatch because I'm going to do a little bit of a Lunar Wolf symbol on there, so I just free-handed a Lunar Wolf symbol, black-lined it with a little bit of a kind of a very fine brush, and then just filled it in black. And I think that's serviceable. It's okay. I'm not a great painter, but it's okay. I quite enjoyed doing that. It's good to practice anyway, isn't it? So there we go. That's the Legion symbol on the top hatch. And then we put a bit of battle damage on there, paint the glass as well. So we're kind of getting there with the paint. I'm not going to detail everything in the paint job, guys. The undercoat was Corax white, put over a primer of grey, and then I just kind of put in some weathering look on the kind of on the forward facing surfaces, which I think that really helps. So a little bit of lead belcher and a little bit of Balthazar gold as well, just to add scorch marks. Get some more transfers down. Once again, out of production Space Wolves stuff this, and same as the miniatures, just pencil in my little kind of crescent moon thing underneath and black line that in. And then we've got some other transfers here from the I think from the Tome Keepers transfer sheet, and these Aquilas are from the Imperial Knights thing. This transfer is from the Baneblade kit, and that's a really nice transfer for an aircraft, the kind of kill markings or drop markings or whatever you want to call them. So yeah, we're kind of just going along now. We put a Legion symbol on the front of the drop pod as well for good measure, and then we're kind of just weathering it, and lots of washes, lots of kind of into the recesses, paying a bit of attention there, and it's really starting to come together. Put a little bit of ard coat on the glass as well, just to give it a bit of a shine. And you can see here the results of a good old wash inside here, just Nuln Oil, just kind of really adds some, makes all the details pop, I think. All right, so we're really getting there with the paint job now. It's really starting to come together. I'm quite happy with this, actually. I do add some black accent colours as well. You'll see in the later footage. Just pick out a couple of areas just for some you know, some variation in colour really, because black is the accent colour for the lunar walls. Here, the mechanism, by the way, you need to be careful when you're kind of painting, because you can disturb the kind of action feature with toys and that. So I'll go into that now. Now, underneath, I had to add a little bit of bracing in here because the paint really stiffened things up. I had to add in a little bit of EPVC bracing just in this location here, just to make sure that it wasn't kind of buckling, because it's tightened up because you put paint on it. Do you know what I mean? It's nothing flows really freely anymore, but you can see some of the black details I've put on here as well, and I've reinforced with a bit of plastic card over the top. So enjoy, guys. I'll throw a bit of music down for you.